Google's making operating systems, Microsoft's making search engines, the world's turning on its head, but is there really a reason for Google and Microsoft to be competing against each other rather? Let's talk to a couple technology journalists about the situation and get their take on the Google versus Microsoft rivalry that seems to be brewing more and more every day. First, we bring in Tom Merritt, the executive editor over at CNET.com. Tom, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Randall.
Also, we bring in Seth Porges from Popular Mechanics. Seth, thanks for being with us as well.
Thanks again.
So, this situation kind of exploded yesterday as Chrome OS was announced. Google, of course, already making a mobile operating system where they've already started competing with Microsoft. A lot of people in the press have made this as sort of a Google versus Microsoft showdown, especially since Bing has been doing really well. And today we heard that it's actually outpaced other Web 2.0 sites like Twitter and Dig in traffic. Tom, what's your take? I mean, people have always kind of pitted Google against Microsoft. Is this comparison worthwhile? Should these companies be worried about each other?
Yeah, it's interesting. Google and Microsoft are definitely competitors in the making money space and being in the technology space, but they've never exactly pitted against each other so closely as they are right now. Obviously, Bing going as a search engine against Google is a direct method. I kind of feel like this is a little overhyped, saying, "Oh, they've passed Dig in traffic." Well, Dig's not a search engine. Neither is Twitter.
Yeah.
These are a little bit apples and oranges. When they've passed Ask.com, or when they've caught up with Yahoo Search, and when they're getting close to Google, then it's time to really talk about something like that. The operating system is a little more interesting because Google's doing it right. They've gone after one operating system on the phone, which is a competitor with Microsoft already. Now they're going after another segment just on the netbook, which is a space that Microsoft hasn't been playing as successfully in as they'd like to.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, no matter where it goes, these companies are going to be running into each other more and more. For that matter, you can throw Apple into the mix, and these three companies kind of, a little bit friends, a little bit enemies, sort of all together. I don't know, Seth, what's your take? I mean, Windows Mobile obviously has been declining in the mobile space for a while, as we've talked about on the show before. Do you think that Google and Microsoft have a lot to prove to each other, maybe?
Well, yeah, as Tom said, they're both competitors in the making money and technology realm. And it's kind of interesting, Google's approach to producing operating systems for different media. They start small with the phones, and then they're moving up to netbooks, and then maybe soon they'll have like a full-fledged desktop OS. I don't know. But it's kind of interesting if you look at Chrome OS, because it's a netbook-designed operating system, and it's based on Linux. And when the first netbooks came out, like the ePCs from ASUS, they were Linux-based. And then soon thereafter, we got Windows-based ones. And the Windows-based ones were much better for more people because they're a little bit more familiar to the average layman user. And so what I think Google is trying to say is, wait a second, we can make this Linux thing better, because that's what Chrome is. It's a Linux-based operating system. We can make it better. We can make it user-friendly. Whether it actually is we haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
But it's kind of interesting because it's stepping back to the roots of what the netbook originally was.
Well, and I mean, Bing has had this $100 million ad campaign. People are kind of giving it a chance. Tom, do you think Bing is going to be successful versus Google in the long term? I mean, you say that right now it's not a big deal because they've passed Web 2.0 companies and they haven't passed real search companies. Do you think that they're going to be someone to watch out for?
Well, I think Microsoft in the search space is already someone to watch out for. I think the question is Bing going to be bigger than Live? And I think it will be, but I just don't get the feeling that they are going to eat Google's lunch there. I mean, Google is a verb. Google is what everyone defaults to. People search for Google on Bing, for goodness sake. I mean, it's really, no. I think Microsoft has done a much better job of competing this time, and they'll probably become the #2 search engine. I don't think that they're going to pass Google in this one.
It would be interesting to see for sure. And Seth, we talked about the mobile space. We talked about the search space. Do you think that going forward, Google and Microsoft will just become more adversarial, or do you think that's even in Google doesn't seem exactly like an adversarial company who tries to use its monopoly power the way Microsoft does. Do you see any sort of problems maybe arising where Google tries to change a little bit of its core values because it wants to compete with this bigger Microsoft?
I think that Google is a little bit more of a subtle company. I think they're cutthroat competitive just like Microsoft is, but their style is a little bit different. They're a little bit more like like Barack Obama. They're going to kill you with kindness. They're going to make you think they're cozying up to you, and then they're going to destroy you.
Yeah.
But I think that what they're doing with Bing, which they really needed to do, is that previously, they had MSN search, and that was one of those search engines, which are the ones that nobody who knows what they're doing uses. It's what people use because it's like the default homepage on Internet Explorer.
Yeah.
If you know how to change your default homepage, you're not using MSN.com to search. Nobody is. So they're trying to create a search engine that people want to go to, that they see the ads for, and they actually type it into their URL bar, and they go, and that department, they've done a good thing. They've done a really good job of that, and it's really necessary for them to create kind of a destination product instead of a default product.
Well, so last takeaway. I mean, Tom, have you used Bing, A, and B, would you ever think of using it as your default browser?
Yes and no. Yes, I've used Bing, and I think the video search is probably the best video search that's out there right now among the major search engines. I have also used Yahoo search, and I think they have the best image search out there. But I tell you, every time I go to do a search, I go to Google because Google is the default search engine in my life. It may not be installed that way on my computer, but it is in Firefox that way, and it just is what I'm most familiar with, and it works. And even though Bing works and Yahoo works too, you kind of get into patterns, and something pretty revolutionary has to happen to break that. I remember when I started using Google for the first time, it was hard for me to switch away from Alta Vista at the time, which is what I was using, because I was just used to it. It wasn't that Alta Vista was better. Google was a lot better, but it took a while for me to break the habit and get into a new habit.
So Seth, I mean, your takeaway, have you used Bing? Are you going to switch to it?
Yeah, I've used Bing. As Tom said, Google's still kind of the default one in my life and most users' life. But as Bing kind of develops functionality, it'll hopefully find certain types of searches that Google is a little bit weak on and kind of capitalize on that, and hopefully use that as sort of like a wedge to really expand market. And
one last thing too. So with Chrome OS, what's the one thing they have to really stick it to Microsoft? Tom.
The one thing Chrome OS has to do right to stick it to Microsoft is actually get more people really familiar with their web properties, because then the price difference, and if they do usability right, that's the other part they have to get right, will bring people into wanting to try these netbooks. But the familiarity is what drove people back to Windows on netbooks, in my opinion. If they get enough people using Google Docs and Gmail and all those things, and they can build that familiarity in right there with Google Gears, so even when you're offline, you're using your Google Docs, I think they could have a big win there. There's a lot of ifs to cover, though.
Yeah. Seth, is there one thing you can think of that they really need to do right?
Yeah, they need to make it easy for people who have never used Linux before to pick up and use. They need to make it look and operate just like Windows or just like Mac OS. So anybody who, no matter what operating system they've used in the past, can instantly figure it out.
Awesome. Guys, we're going to leave it there. Thanks for being on the show. Tom Merritt from CNET.com. He has Buzz Out Loud and so many different things over at CNET TV. Thanks for being with us. Also, Seth Porges from Popular Mechanics. He runs our technology side over there and in the magazine, too. I'm Randall Bennett, and we'll see you later.
Thanks a lot.